Okay, let's talk about how to attack a sentence completion kind of question. At this point, you're familiar with what kind of question that is, what it looks like. One blank or two blanks, they're testing your vocabulary and they're testing your ability to reason logically. The general process for answering these, pretty straightforward. You read the question, one blank or two blanks, and you actually physically inside your mind say blank when you come to that blank, and then you analyze. Inside the program, you'll learn that we use the process called SAR, simplify and analyze, reduce, and restate. That's a process of physically going through the question and analyzing it. And then you check your work. So that's the overview of the three-step process. More particularly, let's look at how you would do it. You would read the sentence, look out for transitional words, look for clues, figure out what the sentence means, propose a word, and then using process of elimination, if your proposed word isn't there and you can't find it, you would use process of elimination to figure it out, and then you would check your work. Now let's go through that with an example. The example that I gave before is medieval kingdoms did not become constitutional republics overnight. On the contrary, the change was blank. And then you have 5 answer choices: unpopular, unexpected, advantageous, sufficient, and gradual. Now, if you took off the very first part of that sentence and just left the very end, the change was. The change was unpopular, unexpected, advantageous, sufficient, or gradual. Those are adjectives, and any one of them could fit in there if you didn't have a context, if there was no logic to it. If we were just looking at the very last phrase, the change was. Without the context, you don't know, was the change unpopular, unexpected, advantageous, sufficient, or gradual. So let's go through and use this process. We read the sentence. Read it through, the change was blank. Followed step number 1. Look for transitional words and look for clues. Very important clues can oftentimes be the semicolons and colons and commas. In this particular case, medieval kingdoms did not become constitutional republics overnight, and then there's a semicolon. That tells you that what comes after that is going to explain what came before it in a little more detail. So the clues here, you know, whether it's a medieval kingdom in this case really doesn't matter, and there's a process that's going on. This thing, a medieval kingdom, changed over time. We know that because it says so. They did not become constitutional republics overnight. So we know that a change occurred in something, and that change was gradual. We're told that in this very first part. Medieval kingdoms did not become constitutional republics overnight. They changed slowly. And then after the semicolon, it actually goes in and explains that in more detail. On the contrary, there's your second clue. So actually, it's your third clue. We have first clue is understanding what the first part says, that this change did not happen overnight. In other words, it was gradual. Then there's the semicolon, clue number 2, that tells you that what comes after that semicolon is going to explain what came before it in more detail. On the contrary tells us that it wasn't overnight. On the contrary, it was going to be something like slow. The change was slow. It was gradual. And if you look down at so you propose that's the next part of it. Look for clues, and then you figure out what the sentence means. We've done all that in the same process. Then you propose a word. In this case, we proposed a word like slowly or gradual. Then you look down in the answer choices to see, does your word show up? And in this case, it does. It's answer choice E, gradual. But let's say that the question was a little more difficult, that the vocabulary was more difficult, or that the logic was more difficult, and you couldn't really propose a word. Now you move into process of elimination, where you look at the words and work back into the blanks. The first way to approach it is to read through the sentence, to figure it out, to use the logic, S-A-R-R, SAR, to figure out what a proposed word would be. Look down on the words and see if it's there. If it's not there, you have to work through process of elimination. Work from the answer choices back up into the blanks. But in this case, we got it. It was gradual. Then you check your work. The way you check your work in sentence completion is you plug the word in and then reread the sentence. Medieval kingdoms did not become constitutional republics overnight. On the contrary, the change was gradual. So the logic fits, the word fits, so it's a correct answer choice. Now, one more hint on how you attack